What is up, everyone? Happy delayed Fantasy Friday, also known as Saturday. Today, boom, The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This is a book that I've heard many things about. You've probably heard many things about this. Maybe you've read this book already. Let me know what you guys thought of this book in the comments below. If you're giving spoilers, just please do the spoiler, enter thing. So yes. So you follow around a character named Rin, who is a teenage girl, and she goes to school. This isn't just any school. This is like the elite of the elite of the elite school, and it's like a military academy. Every captain, admiral, warlord, whatever, what have you, has gone to this school. And Rin is very out of place because she's poor. And we kind of have a class system going on, which you find out right away. Rin, as a poor person, doesn't have time to study, really. She has to work, and most poor people have to work on a farm. She works as a shopkeeper. So she has a little bit more time to study, and she's very persistent. She makes it her dream, her goal to go to this school, and she's very bright. So yeah, she gets in. She doesn't fit in because she's the poor southern person in a world of northern elites. And as you can probably tell, Rin is a very persistent character, very motivated, and it makes for some good things about her, but also some not so good things. In the first chapter, when she's studying, someone who's offering to teach her a few things is oh, do you know what this and this is? And then she recites those things, and then the teacher's okay, can you explain what they mean? And she's huh? No, I just know them. That's kind of how I felt reading Rin the entire book, where there would be a thing, and she would know that thing, but she couldn't more broadly explain that thing. And Rin would be very book smart on that thing, and she'd be very persistent on that thing. But she didn't have quite the broad analysis of, hey, what should we do and why should we do it? And she kind of lacked the more political understanding of the world around her, in part because she's thrown into a different culture, a more elite culture, and in part just because she focuses on other things, right? She focuses on the book learning and not so much the systemic analysis of what's going on and why things are the way they are. And the way my brain works is I always want to know why. Why is this the way it is? Let's investigate this. But Rin will really do things kind of aggressively, but not really have a great plan or understanding of what's going on before she's doing the things. One of the characters that is one of my favorites is this professor. And when Rin talks to this professor, in her head, she'll be doing the classic student thing of trying to outsmart the professor. The professor's hey, don't do this thing. And she's well, he's saying don't do this thing, but I'm gonna do that thing when he's not looking anyway. And it's oh, come on, man. No. So yeah, I have kind of mixed feelings on Rin. She didn't really resonate with me, but I do how it seemed she was consistent, even if she was doing things that I don't like her to be doing or don't agree with her decision-making process. It seemed like a consistent decision-making process. The plot wasn't amazing either. The first 2/5 of the book is in a school setting, which, if you like school settings, I think you'll like this book. I liked the school setting quite a bit. The school setting in here was better than in Red Queen, I will say that. And Red Queen, the school setting lasts the whole book. But here, almost halfway through the book, something happens, and it's much less of a school setting. And things definitely happen from that point on. I just didn't feel the things that happened after were good. They were fast-paced enough, the pacing was fine, and there was more traditional fantasy action scenes. I didn't feel for the characters in the action scenes. I think that was part of the problem for me. I knew Rin wouldn't die, right? Because it's told from her perspective. And then the other characters I just didn't care about. And I don't know if that's because Rin didn't care about them either, because she's very, persistent and I don't want to say selfish, but she's definitely self-motivated. So she didn't really care about these other characters for the most part, I should say. And then I didn't feel connected to the characters. And then that just lowered the stakes for me. Now, what was brilliant here and why I'm like super excited to keep reading the series is the world building, more specifically the themes and the actual historical context of this book. And like, if you guys have been watching my channel for like 6 months or whatever, you guys know I love my historical context. And like, this fantasy book is better at talking about like history and historical context than the New York Times editorial page. But I digress. So themes, war, let's talk about those things. This book definitely shows the brutality of war and what it does to people, communities, and stuff like that. It also shows things like drugs and drug addiction and like mass drug addiction and how that affects people in communities. Also, the channel Library of Alexandria did an entire video about the real world history that inspired R.F. Kuang in these books. And it's very good to watch. You can even watch that video before reading this book. I will link it. And it's cool because, again, you're in a school setting. So it's like perfect to have like a page here or a page there about actual history within the world, which is like parallel to real history in the real world, which to me made it more realistic, even though I didn't really know a whole lot of the history in China in like the late 1800s. But it just felt like a real world thing to me. Like sometimes in books, it's just like, this isn't a fundamental understanding of how power and power structures work in some other fantasy worlds. Here, it makes perfect sense because, I mean, it's using real world power structures, right? So, of course it makes sense. And there's one excerpt that I do want to read from this book. And oh yeah, this book has like trigger warnings for just like every brutality of war that you can think of. So sexual assault, like mass needless murders, tortures, all of that. But again, this is based on like actual history, and it's fairly like dark, but I wouldn't say it's like stereotypical grimdark, but it has like a grimdark tone. But R.F. Kuang says specifically that it's not grimdark. But yeah, anyway, so I'm just going to read something, no context. I'm just going to say this doesn't really spoil anything for you at all because it's like a fairy tale within this story. So it's like, really hard to take anything from it. So there's this person stranded on the road. The soldier who finds her rapes her. The merchant who finds her takes her clothes and leaves her there, as they would be too heavy for his cart. And then the hunter like takes care of her or whatever, like takes her into his home, feeds her, gives her clothes, whatever. But think of the soldier and the merchant in this example. And again, if you watch that Library of Alexandria video and like learn about the history between Britain and China, both the military action against China by Britain is grotesque, but also the trade exploitation is fairly grotesque too. And it hurts them like tremendously. And in this example here, the soldier and the merchant on like a much smaller scale, on just like an individual to individual scale, are hurting this woman in different ways and with different motives. But I mean, they're still awful motives, both of them. And like, it's those themes that are great. But I guess this brings me full circle to Rin. Can Rin grapple with challenging those themes? And my contention is no. Rin doesn't fundamentally challenge power. And like, to be clear, if Rin was on the side of the road and like she encountered either the merchant or the soldier, she would probably just like slaughter them, which is cool in its own way. But I want, or at least I was kind of hoping for, this theme with a character that would challenge that theme in the world a bit more and challenge the system, challenge the structure, rather than just like accepting the system. And I know Rin like has issues with power, or like, the people who have like direct command of her, like her teachers, for example. So it's not that she can't challenge people or doesn't challenge people, or like general norms and systems of like just respecting your teacher, respecting your elders, because she does that, but she doesn't do it in a like way that's like, I don't know, like good for people or like good for like other human beings. She does it in like a more selfish way. Like, again, take this example. If Rin was the traveler, like the soldier or the merchant or whatever, and she found someone that she could exploit on the side of the road. Like, let's say Rin was the soldier or the merchant in this example, and she found someone on the side of the road that she would personally benefit from exploiting in some way. I feel like she would do it. And I know it might sound like I'm being, like, I don't know, like I'm too soft or I don't like grimdark characters, which couldn't be farther from the truth. But in this particular case, when we're looking at things like Cost of War, if we had a character that felt more pain and had more like of a collectivist perspective, it would be way more heartbreaking when the Cost of War kicked in. Like, let's say Rin lost a loved one. Like, it would be a lot more sad. Like, again, in this book, when people die, I don't care because Rin doesn't care. But I understand that I'm asking for a lot. Like, what I'm asking for is a book to be very historical and have very profound themes, which most books, or most fantasy books at least, strike one, you're out. But this book actually has that, but it doesn't quite bring it home for me in terms of like characters, plot, and themes, and like very detailed historical world. It doesn't like connect all of those as well as it could have. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I'm pretty excited to read the second book, which is, here it is, Dragon Republic. Boom. I also have the third book, which came out in November. So I'll be reading these. I'm not sure when, but I'm pretty excited. So yeah, that's everything. Like, comment, subscribe, join my Discord if you want to talk super extensively about any book in the series, or if you want to buddy read The Dragon Republic with me, definitely. I'd love someone to talk to about this and go through this book with, or The Burning God even, that's fine. And yeah, I'm almost at 200 subscribers, so if you guys aren't subscribed, my goodness, and you've watched me ramble about history and Rin and all this other nonsense, yeah, definitely subscribe. I don't know what you're doing, but yes, thank you for watching, and see you guys next time. Oh, and happy 2021.